Here we go. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us on the first of 6 sessions in the Career Roadmap series. We're running this series July through September. We'll have 2 sessions each month. Tonight is a kickoff, and I am delighted to have Michelle Saunders kick off this series and share her insights about a very important key action for all of us, career self-discovery. Michelle herself has experienced great career progression. If you take a peek at her LinkedIn, and actually we all get to congratulate her tonight. She just took on a new role, a new challenge at IGT as Head of Talent and Inclusion for Global Gaming. So very good, and congratulations there. And I guess I'll say, without her own due diligence around what she likes, dislikes, what are her motivators in the workplace and her skill set, her journey might be very different. So I think with Michelle providing her insights tonight, we will all walk away with valuable advice this evening. Now, I will remind you, everyone is currently on WebEx mute. Michelle will spend about 15 to 20 minutes sharing some information, and then we'll get into about a 10 to 15-minute open dialogue. We have had trouble when I put everyone off of mute. We've had feedback trouble, so we may try it along the way. But for now, I will follow chat. So if you have any questions, put them in the chat box and we'll make sure they get addressed. And I know Michelle would like this to be interactive, so she probably will put a question or two in chat for you. And then finally, this session is being recorded because we do place all of the WebEx, all the WebExes in our URI Alumni Career Services Library. So with that said, I will turn our WebEx over to Michelle, and welcome and thank you.
Thank you, Karen. I'm so sorry. I got so excited. I figured out how I could see the chat, so I got really excited. I turned Q&A. So we will use the chat today, if that's okay. So with my role, at least for the past 15 years, and definitely the past 6, I've been doing a lot with virtual training. So I tend to want to make this much more interactive than certainly just a lecture. So with that said, we will be using the chat feature today. And what I would like to know from all of you before I launch into kind of my career insights is where you are from and why you are here today. So when I say where are you from, where are you sitting within either our state or outside of our state? So we can put that in the chat to everyone. So Barbara and Leo, I'm going to call on you to be my people that I know are in the audience. If you could participate in the chat. And Barbara, I'll even let you say you're from Rome as well, but even though you're in Providence. She is.
And you could respond to all participants or directly to Michelle. Some of you are responding to me privately. We've got North Kingston, East Greenwich, within the state.
Okay. I see Warwick, Wake.
Yep.
So some people are privately. Kingston.
Maryland, Chestnut Hill, Mass, New Jersey.
Okay. All right. So definitely countrywide, Northeast anyway. And I know, as I mentioned, Barbara, who works with me at IGT, is in Providence, only about 1.5 miles from me, but is actually from Rome, which is really neat. So welcome to all of you. And my second question for you, if you could make sure that you're responding to all participants, that would be great, is what made you want to sit in and listen tonight? So what kind of within your own career, what are you interested in hearing tonight? And I'll take a drink so I can. Okay, graduated, not sure what to do with long-term career. Okay, maybe there isn't an option to all participants. Some people did have that.
Yep.
It's a drop down, by the way. Someone's interested in a career change. Okay. All right. So that's great. So behind me, you can see possibly, that's my grad school URI Master's in Education. So I'm very proud of that. And just to give you a little bit of a snapshot of my career journey, I'm getting older, so I could take up the whole 15 to 20 minutes if I went too long with that. I did not have the typical background, let's say, or path to college. I actually grew up in foster care and ended up, I ended up placed in a really good home. Still had, not sure kind of where I wanted to go in life, and ended up after high school not having a plan to go to college, never took the SAT, and ended up going to community college and dropping out. I ended up a continuing ed student at night at Johnson & Wales. And while I was there, I worked at AAA, and I worked at AAA as a member service counselor, entry-level position. And that was one of the first places that someone said, wow, you're really smart. And having that opportunity for someone to say that to me really changed my own view of myself and my paradigm. So I ended up at Johnson & Wales, ended up getting my bachelor's degree at night, climbed through the ranks at AAA, and went into the manager trainee program, left the company for a few years, went back, became an assistant manager in the Boston area, branch manager. And then about 17 years ago, I was promoted into an HR role. And it was to help diversify our workforce. But then also I had to start a mentoring program. And so when I did that and started this mentoring program and saw adults transform in the workplace, my whole life changed. My whole passion for what I was doing changed. I loved my company, but I had an opportunity to help adults in the workplace. And that's when in 2007, I think, I went back to school, I went to URI and got my master's degree in adult education. And so that's an example of where I really went with my gut and went with my passion with what I wanted to do in life. And so, and I kind of let my intuition guide me in many ways. And in 2014, I had been in my role at AAA for about 10 years. I decided to take a leap. I quit my job actually without a job. I'm not advocating that for anybody, especially in this climate. But I decided to take a leap, and I went out and I consulted and I contracted, and I learned about global work and virtual learning, and really opened my eyes to what else is out there. And I think that we have to go with our gut, and look for companies that match our values, but B, we also have to think about what's next on the horizon. So for me, when I was working at AAA, it wasn't global. They weren't doing e-learning at the time. And I said, if I want to really be good in this industry, I need to do something. I need to gain more skills and do more. And I ended up consulting at Fidelity. I did a contract gig at Bryant. So I had more of an opportunity to expand my world. And that's really where I found my happiness. I ended up going to, I worked at Sensata Technologies to get more global work. I ended up working at Ocean State Job Lot, which is not global, but gave me an opportunity to try new things and do some different work. And then I ended up at IGT. And sometimes you have to take steps back to take steps forward. And so I narrowed my focus a little bit at IGT, did a really, really good job. My favorite place to work out of anywhere I've worked, because I love the global work. I love the business that we're in, which is the gaming industry, lottery and casino. Had an opportunity to travel and do more, and that's what I'm doing. I'm having a lot of fun. And so then this role, this opportunity opened up, and I think that it's even more of an opportunity to connect the dots within human resources. So with that said, that's a little bit of my story, and I told you I wouldn't bore you, and I apologize if I did. But what I do is I make sure that I understand personal passions and my professional passions, and how those two things couple together. So remember, I told you that I was a young kid without necessarily a future. Growing up in foster care, my passion is helping people get from where I am to where they need to be. So learning in the workplace, jobs, connecting, performance, all of those things are my personal passions and my professional passions. So that's my experience. And what I'm going to ask you to do right now is think about what are your personal passions connected to your professional passions. So what might your personal passions be that might be connected to your professional passions? And you can send it to me. Karen will read me anything that's sent to her, or you can send it to the group. So 2 words, I'm looking for 2 adjectives. And one of the things that I have in my LinkedIn profile is that I help individuals and companies with understanding their motivation and their and skills gaps. So personal and professional passions I'm looking for. So think about that for a minute. I'm going to allow for a minute. Okay, so Kira is saying, that's my niece's name, by the way. So personal passion is Japan. So Kira, you have an opportunity to share a little bit. Maybe there's an opportunity to connect that personal passion and that professional passion. You can unmute yourself if you'd like. Neil is saying professional development, building confidence and a positive perspective. So in growing others, and I wish I had an opportunity to connect with you more, Neil, to hear more about that and what you're doing currently. If you want to type that in the chat, you can certainly do that. I see empowerment and helping others. Development, I know that about you, Barbara, is your passion. Support employees, managers, and companies, develop and grow. So Barbara and I are in very similar roles at IGT. We work very closely together. So it's interesting that we share those personal and professional passions. Helping others, advocating for others, providing an environment for people to grow. And so I will tell you that these are the keys to moving up in an organization or and sometimes to landing a job, right? Because when you can share your personal passion and your professional passion, and you can bring that to life in an interview or bring that to life in the workplace, you're going to be the person that people want to hire. So Adele is saying checking off tasks, meeting planner, being able to talk with others to reach goals, to make those connections. Sounds very much like a project manager to me, a passionate project manager. Okay. Training within the workplace when possible. Currently working on a book to publish. Awesome. So if you can think about this, and it doesn't have to be answered necessarily today, but if I always tell people to connect those 2 things, and for the person that talked about it being Japan, Kira, there's an opportunity for that, if you're not already doing this, to find global work that connects that personal passion to that profession, the personal passion to the professional passion, right? And maybe it's not just Japan, maybe it's to work in a company where you're able to influence Asia Pac, which is Asia Pacific, which is actually that whole half of the world. And so finding a way to connect those 2 things, I think, is pretty key. Okay. I'd also like to share something with you that I created when I was at AAA. And this is a little bit of a self-assessment that you can, let me see if I haven't worked in, Karen, I don't know if my WebEx, if my share button is working.
All right. Have you gone up to share? Or
Yes.
either at the top or even on the bottom, there should be options, share content.
Yeah, it doesn't look like it's, oh no, here it is. Let me see. Yeah, it doesn't look it's going to work for me. What I will do is I will give you the concept of it, and I'll read you some of the areas for consideration. And what I'd like you to, and Karen will send it out after to you. What this will allow you to do is to think about it as a self-assessment. And as a self-assessment, you can do a bit of an inventory. And the way that I created this was when you go into a grocery store and you pick up a new product, right, that you want to buy. The first thing you do is you look at it and you look at the ingredients, and then you put it down and then you compare it to something else, and you kind of like figure out from a nutritional perspective, is this for me, right? And we don't look at our own selves a lot of times in that same way. So this little document that I created allows you to do kind of your own assessment of yourself related to your performance. And in some ways that's your skills, and in some ways that's your motivation or your personality or the things that you like to do. So that it's kind of broken up into two parts. And so with that, I call it a career development discussion tool. And you think about your career related abilities. And in that category is your service to others, your emotional intelligence, kind of how you deal with certain things, your performance, your review ratings, your job knowledge, your industry knowledge, your communication skills, your problem solving, your working independently, managing priorities. So you get an opportunity when you get this to look at the things that you know that you do really well, and it allow you to think about kind of what you like to do. The other piece is, outside volunteerism, whether or not, health and wellness is something that's interest to you, your committee involvement or community involvement. So you can do a little bit of a self-assessment. And then what I always tell people to do is talk to someone else about this. Talk to a mentor or a manager or someone that you know and say, what do you think about this? What do you think my skills are? You should do a bit of a self-assessment first. And then what are the things that kind of I would want to develop if that's the kind of career path that I'm going into, okay? So it's thinking about those personal and professional passions, and then thinking about where do I need to do in order to get there. I teach a class on Tuesday nights at College Unbound, and it's actually on this very thing about career journeys, understanding the new normal and how we work within the new normal of virtual work, connecting to people, networking, because we're all home, right? And so that class was actually put on specifically for this reason. And I'm working with people on how their LinkedIn presence can help them land a job or can help connect them to a different field, or how you break in. And a lot of that is through networking. So how many of you, have landed your current job through LinkedIn, if you would like to share? I'll just wait for the chat. So you can say I have or I haven't. Have you seen anything, Karen, in the chat?
No.
Okay. I see something in the Q&A. If somebody had gone to the Q&A, I think. Let me see. Somehow I can't. Okay, so some haven't. Some have through word of mouth. Okay. I have, since 2014, most of my jobs, and I say because I was consulting for a little bit, have actually been through networking through LinkedIn. Karen, I'm on LinkedIn with you, right?
That is correct. Yes.
Yes. And please find me on LinkedIn with me. It's important if you're trying to break into an industry or you're trying to grow within your industry. It's important to connect to pages that are associated, because you'll be connected with people possibly who are associated as well, who are following articles, who are connected to other people. So there's in Rhode Island, I think there's 3 degrees of separation on LinkedIn. And so there's a lot of ways in which you can get connected. I've been recruited often through LinkedIn. for those of you that are at IGT, don't worry, I'm not looking. But it's good for networking.
And I will add one thing about LinkedIn. Don't ever be too cautious or intimidated about looking at other people's profiles. Profiles are often such an education for you. When you look at someone's profile and you see their career journey and how they have gone from A to B, they might have taken a step forward, a step back, and then a step forward again. It's very interesting to look at people's career stories, and often those could be launch pads for you. You can get ideas from that. I know early career audience will say to me, oh, I feel funny looking at people's LinkedIn profiles. But that's why we have LinkedIn. It truly is this online networking place, if you will, and we certainly can learn from each other as simply as looking at people's profiles.
So I've talked to you a little bit about your kind of your passions, which are in a lot of ways your motivators. It's important to understand your likes and dislikes, and I would give advice to anyone. Sometimes it's waiting things out and being good at certain things in order to prove yourself, right? So an example is I was recruited to IGT to be responsible for a piece of learning, and a lot of my job was compliance, which totally boring, does not go along with my personality. I was like dreading having to be responsible for compliance, but the way that I did it was I used my ability to win over other people. That's one of my strengths and strength finders. Is my number one is woo, which is winning others over. My number two is communication. And I would recommend Strength Finder, by the way, to anybody. It's like you can get an assessment for less than $15 online, and it can tell you your top 5 strengths. So winning others over, communication. So what I did was I built relationships with my stakeholders to almost treat them like clients, to meet their client needs. And we ended up pretty much 100% compliant as a company, being able to pass all the audits because I used my skills to do a job that I didn't love, if that makes sense. And I think that it's helped me show in the organization and establish credibility that I can do other things. So that's an example of where sometimes you have to wait it out and understand what what your likes and dislikes are. So it's important, as I mentioned, StrengthsFinder, again, to understand where you get your energy from. So if you take a StrengthsFinder assessment, I want you to understand that it doesn't mean you can't. So there's 34 strengths. It doesn't mean you can't do the other 29 strengths. It's just those top 5 strengths are where you get your energy. And so if you can identify where you get your energy, you're going to be shining in the workplace. So I highly recommend that. And it's important to get input from others as well. And then observe others, like you said, Karen, observe on LinkedIn, observe in the workplace, and really try to gain an understanding of what fits for you. Adriana Dawson is she heads up community relations for Verizon, and she's been a good friend of mine for about the past 15 years. And she spoke to my class at College Unbound, and we spoke to, so a lot of the students at College Unbound are adults who have decided to go back to college. A lot of them are, middle age. And we talked about kind of the career journey that we've taken. And in the beginning, it's kind of like this idea of pay your dues and show what you're worth. And then as you grow in your career, you're able to be a little more discerning in the roles that you take, or the things that you ask for, or the things you walk away from. I told you I quit my job without a job at 40 in 2014, and I could do that because I had an opportunity to make my own career. And that's what I always tell people is, There are no shackles on your arms. You're not shackled to a company. You can be so good at what you do that the company is chasing you. Telling my colleagues all my secrets. They're going to know. I don't know. So now I will open it up for questions.
Yes, any questions put into the chat?
Or the Q&A. We'll monitor both.
Yes.
Oh yeah, there's all these Q&A I think I haven't seen. Let's see. It's just hard to see both Q&A and the chat. If you can read me what you're seeing in the Q&A.
So any advice on searching, applying for jobs during COVID-19?
So I would say, this is one of the things that we've talked about, that I had another guest speaker into class. It's not as likely for you to get a job if you're just applying online and waiting for a recruiter to pick up your resume and application from an online system. That's why I recommend LinkedIn. I also recommend informational interviews with people, and now we're going to have to do those virtually, right? So, but what I would say is asking people for 10 minutes of their time to hear about, how they got on their career journey. This networking will help connect you to people, will help connect you to companies. So I would say definitely try to do more of that. I saw a question come through. I'm in the Q&A right now. I can't, for some reason, Karen, I can't see it. So can you read to me what you're seeing?
Yes, I have one that says, oops, I just lost it. Let's go up here. So what do you do if you have a passion in something and yet the pay truly isn't enough? An example, education.
Yeah, that's a tough one. So I would say, and I can't see who wrote that. It depends on, do you want to teach children or do you want to teach adults? And I would say if you are working in a company and your passion is to teach and you have an opportunity to get into either training or mentoring other people. And for me, I always had the goal kind of to be a teacher as well. I remember when I left AAA, I thought, I want to be a teacher. And for me at that point with two young children, the pay wasn't going to work for me. But I made sure that I stayed in the industry of education. And that helped, when I say education, within the workplace, that helped me make the money, but then also to be able to teach. There's also educational consulting that I know Sulina Mohanty, she's one of my Leadership Rhode Island colleagues. She actually was a teacher, but now consults with school districts. So there's plenty of jobs in the field. I would say make sure that you are familiar with virtual learning, if that's something that you want to get into. With what I do at IGT, I work with EF, which is Education First, which is a company they're a worldwide company, but they actually teach English language learning and training. So that's a corporate company that you can get into in the field of education if you want to. But I also will say education in the school system starts low, but over time you gain a salary, and you gain in a lot of districts pensions, and you gain an opportunity to take on other work if you want to. I know for my daughter who just graduated high school, we paid her tutor $75 an hour to help her get through online geometry. So, so there's ways to pick up money within education and still be able to do that work. Mm-hmm.
We have another question. Do you have ideas or suggestions how to evaluate a company's career development program?
So definitely ask the questions in the process. Many companies are trying to have a LinkedIn presence, which will show you that. They're also trying to have, and I'm sorry about my lighting, my lamp actually went out, so if it looks funny. So a lot of companies are trying to show you that. So they have like this employer value proposition where they want to sell you their career development programs. But again, those informational interviews will help. You can reach out to people on LinkedIn and ask employees of that company, you know, about their career progression. You can check on their website for, you know, you can actually see, going back to LinkedIn, you can actually see a lot of the employees that work at the company. So you'll see the company and then you'll see employees who work there. You could view their profiles to see about their career progression. But I would say that should be a question that you should be going into the interview process with one of your questions, as one of your questions. Can you tell me about your career development program? Absolutely. But they have that usually as part of their employer value proposition.
Mm-hmm. And Michelle, can you stay on for one or two more questions?
I can stay on for as long as people want.
Sure. So we have another question. I find it hard to find opportunities in Rhode Island. How can I best use LinkedIn better to look for different opportunities?
So LinkedIn, have you looked, I would ask that person a follow-up question. Have you looked at that company's jobs on LinkedIn, first of all? Indeed is another site to see what companies there are. It's also, so right now, 2020 is going to be very interesting because a lot of companies may not be hiring this year because of budgets. But it's important to possibly see, you know, is there possibilities to contract? Because one thing that people don't realize is that a lot of companies may not have positions open in a company under their name, but they might have asked a contract company to fill a role for them. So if you're in the accounting industry, you may want to figure out who are the contract companies that fill roles for accountants, and maybe take a 6-month gig, making probably more per hour than you would as an employee in the company. For instance, within the learning industry, Clarity Consultants is there's another one, Core Access Learning is another one, that they actually just fill contractors in companies. And so a company might hire a contractor versus go out with a full position for now. And I went to Sensata that way, where I started out as a contractor and they asked me to stay. I was just planning on contracting. So I stayed there for a while. So that's an option.
We also forget that we have our connections on LinkedIn, and I also advise using LinkedIn messaging to reach out to some of your connections that are either in an industry or a function that you have interest, and share with them that you are very interested in learning more about that industry or that function, and what advice do they have for you to either gain new connections or, you know, learn more about it. So just don't forget that when you have connected with people, there really is a reason for that, and use your LinkedIn connections. I find that people are very responsive using LinkedIn messaging, so know that's an option for you.
I did see a question, Karen, that someone asked about finding their personal passion. And I'm often asked that question, and that's a hard one, right? But I think if you can take that step of figuring out your strengths, and you can certainly reach out to me. I'm an alum. I'm certainly willing to help. If you find your strength, I would never want to prescribe to you what you should be doing, right? That's one thing I don't want to do. Just like when I tell people, I do personality assessments and DISC, if you're ever familiar with DISC, right? So there's dominance, conscientious, influencing, and steady. And conscientious is one where a lot of people who are, you know, in the financial field or engineering or accounting, sometimes, you know, more often than not, they fall within that category. And so oftentimes I'm asked, should I switch careers if I'm a C or a D or an I or an S? And the answer is, no one can tell you what you should do. We can't prescribe that for you. You just have to figure out what you love. Where do you get your energy? That's what's really important. So, and I use I keep doing this because an exercise that we do when we train is write your name 3 times with your non-dominant hand, right? So that means if you're right-handed, you write with your left hand. If you're left-handed, you write with your right hand. Uh-oh, did I lose you? Can you all hear me? I got kicked out. Can you hear me? Okay, I got kicked out. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right. So when you do that, when you write with your non-dominant hand, it takes you long to do it. It takes a lot of focus. It takes more energy and it exhausts you, right? But if you write with your dominant hand, you write with your right hand, then that's easy. You know, that's when you're using your skill, that using your talents and your strengths is when you're using your dominant hand. And that's what we want to say is, you know, I'm not an analytical person. That's just not how my brain is wired, but I can do it. If I have to analyze spreadsheets or do compliance, Barbara, who's on the call, is here. She knows that we had a meeting today on putting together a presentation about compliance. I'm going to do it. It's going to be great. It's going to take me forever and I'm going to take a nap after. But to do something like this, where I'm facilitating, where I'm talking to people, this gives me energy. So it's about finding the things that give you energy. That's where you're going to find your passion. So what other questions do you have?
Do you think it is worth it to take on more debt to go to grad school or find a creative way to make your bachelor's work better?
Oh, that's a tough one. I have advice. I won't give the advice on about going into debt. So first of all, I certainly went back to grad school. My company paid for 2/3 of my grad school. I did incur a little debt to do it. So I'm not going to tell you either way whether or not you should get into debt. I can tell you I'm making more money with a master's degree. Yes. Yes, I pay a student loan. Yes. However, I would try to A, make your bachelor's work, B, work in a company that may be able to help you pay for it. But for me, I don't believe I'd be where I am right now without my master's.
Mhm.
So, so I think it depends on the industry too.
Right. It is an investment, and you have to really think that you will enjoy whatever the masters will bring to you, whether you're looking for a specific function you want to be in or a certain type of work. So just make sure you've done your due diligence thinking about the type of masters that you would want to go for.
And a master's without experience doesn't mean anything, to be honest. What I've done recruiting, and I would see people come up to me with their MBA resume, but they had no experience, not even Dunkin' Donuts. And when I say that, they had no customer service experience, nothing. They had no job experience. That doesn't help you. But for me, because I was in my industry, going back made me more of an expert, then do it. If you're going for your MBA after your bachelor's, make sure that you are getting experience at the same time.
All right, one more question perhaps?
Sure, 1 or 2. Oh, I see Megan's here. Megan worked with me at Ocean State Job Lot.
Mhm. How do you narrow down which passion to pursue?
Well, and I think you have to look at, so, you know, it's important to be practical as well, right? So I think it's important to say, here's what's in Rhode Island if I want to stay in Rhode Island, you know, and here's where my passions may be. So if when I was going to grad school, I had 2 young children. And so, and I'm still, I have a teenager, I have a teenager who just graduated high school and one who's going to finish 2 years of high school. And so for me, I'm not going anywhere. So I have to look at, and I'm fine where I'm at for those of you that are IGT, but I have to look at what is in front of me in Rhode Island and where can I align that passion right now. If you want to move to the West Coast and be a game designer, or work in Silicon Valley or do any of those things, then I think you have more options for your passions. If you want to go work, be in the Peace Corps and help people in the rainforest, then I think you have that opportunity. So I think you have to look at what's here in Rhode Island, and I think you have to say, based on if you decide to do your Strengths Finder or whatever, what companies have jobs right now, and think about, always look at what is the future of the industry, right? What jobs are going to stay? And for me, I wasn't just going to be able to be a PowerPoint in a classroom presentation or any presenter anymore. I had to figure out, I've got to get more knowledge about e-learning. I was always 2 years ahead of where my company was. And I think that's important to be too. Always think about what's the future of the industry that you're in.
And sometimes your passion might take longer. My passion is career development for sure. And yet it took me a while to really get into roles, daytime and evening, that really fulfill that. So when you do narrow down your passion, then what comes out of that is really like a career action plan of all the steps you'll want to take towards that. And that often doesn't happen overnight. And yet you want to stick to the plan.
And leads in companies might not materialize right away, right? So, people that you meet in 2020 might not be for the reason in 2020, they might be 2022, or they might be 2021. And here's an example. So I've applied for jobs that I didn't get. And this has happened to me twice in my life, at least. Applied for jobs that I didn't get. Had complete grace through the process, would love to stay connected, would love to stay in your network. One of them was someone who was new to Rhode Island. And I said, I know everybody in Rhode Island, so if you need me to connect you, let me know. And that person is now kind of one of my bosses, who had moved here from Chicago, didn't know anybody. And I stayed on her mind. She hired somebody else for the job. And the older I get, the more I worry less about that and whether or not I got a job or not over someone else. And we stayed connected, and then something else opened up and I ended up in the company doing compliance, remember? And did a good job with that. And now I'm doing what I really, really love to do. So sometimes it's about, and I think about it in a way, and I don't want to say this in the wrong way, but I think of it like, and my husband is out in the living room watching animal shows. But I think about it in a way of like which you watch a leopard in the forest and you see them behind the trees and they're waiting, and they might, take a little nap, but they're always watching what's going on. And so for you, you need to be that leopard in the forest that is ready when that opportunity comes up. I don't know where I got that from. Maybe because he's watching those shows right now.
Great example, though. Well, folks, we are hitting 7:45, and I do want to respect Michelle's time as well as those of you that have stayed on. Thank you very much for participation tonight. Michelle, great insights that we're walking away with. We've got a lot to think about. To all of you, tomorrow I will be posting on the website as well as sending you an email. We have a one-page document that shows a wheel about career self-discovery. I've also taken a lot of notes from Michelle's comments tonight, so I will create a one-pager of some of her key points also. So the website is Alumni Association, URI Career Services. So we'll make sure we get that out there tomorrow, latest Wednesday. I'm promising tomorrow, and I am relying on another person to get it out there. So let's say by Wednesday, it will be out there. For those of you that attended, and even those that registered and were not able to attend, I'll be getting those documents out to you via attachments, via email. So Michelle, thank you so much. You gave some great insights to everyone.
It was my pleasure, and I'm going to send you that document I referred to.
Very good, yes. And the recording, yes, you will find that out on the URI Alumni Career Services website. All right, everyone. Have a great evening. And again, thank you, Michelle.
Thank you. Nice to see a lot of you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
But the ones that I know.